Hello, everybody, and welcome. Thank you for joining us in today's webinar. This is the product update webinar for spring 2020. I'm your host, Justin Miller, and what we're going to be doing today is, first of all, I'm going to be introducing you to everyone who will be speaking today, discussing different products. We will be starting discussing the updates that are currently going on with Wowza Streaming Engine, followed by Wowza Streaming Cloud. Then we'll talk about the ability to monitor and get analytics using Wowza. And finally, the ClearCaster Pro updates. Now, during each of these presentations, we are going to have time for Q&A. So if you have questions specifically to Engine or Cloud or Analytics or ClearCaster Pro, you can ask it after we do the demo. Feel free to type in your questions at any time. But if we're going to answer questions, we're going to answer them at that time. Now, just to make sure that everybody can hear me, see my screen, you can see everybody else's faces, please feel free to type into the Q&A window right now where you're from. The Q&A window is specifically where we're going to be answering questions from, and for that reason, we have removed the ability to type into the chat window. Hey, Bruce, I see we have someone that's local to Denver. Hope things are going well for you. Hi, Jesse, Scott. All right, we got a lot of people from a lot of different places. Hey, we have someone from Paris. All right, so first of all, we have Anthony with us, Anthony Lazaro. He is the Senior Director of Product for Wowza Streaming Engine. Anthony, glad to have you here.
Hey, Justin. Glad to chat with everyone today.
I always forget where you're living now. I'm sorry. You're in the East Coast, though, right?
East Coast of the U.S. in Charlottesville, Virginia.
Okay. I hope it's good weather, finally.
It's doing nice. It's spring.
We finally have some good weather here, I'm happy to say. Everyone else is from the Denver area. We have Robert Picant, the Senior Product Manager of Wowza Streaming Cloud. Robert, how you doing? Okay, Robert is muted, but that's okay. Glad to have you here.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
Yeah, the weather's getting nice. It's a beautiful day in Colorado.
And we also have James Sherry, the Senior Product Manager for Monitoring and Analytics. James, this is James? I'm used to saying Jamie, so.
It's okay. Doing well. Thanks, Justin.
All right. And last of all, last but not least, we have Dan Germaine, the Principal Product Manager for ClearCaster Pro. Dan, glad to have you again. How you doing, man?
I am doing great today. Really excited to be talking to everyone today. I think it'll be a good session. I'm
really excited for the stay-at-home order to be over next week. That's what I'm excited about. But yes, I'm excited about this webinar too. So hey, we can let's get going. Let's talk about Wowza Streaming Engine. Anthony,
let's do it. So I'm excited to talk about Wowza Streaming Engine today with everybody. The first thing I'm going to kick off with is just all the updates we've been having around WebRTC with Wowza Streaming Engine. It's a very timely feature in terms of folks thinking about remote broadcasting, how you get streams in, as well as even thinking about some low latency use cases that continues to be a compelling need for interactive video type work. So we've done a lot recently with Wowza Streaming Engine. If you're in our beta list, you've probably been getting emails about Wowza Streaming Engine beta programs and some WebRTC features. And so what do we have to share with you? First is just overall improved WebRTC publisher reliability, so how we negotiate and handle sessions. We've made a lot of progress there to just give you an overall higher reliability broadcast from your users. The next thing is around browser compatibility. So I think historically, a lot of you might have checked out WebRTC with Wowza, say 2-3 years ago, and we had a much more limited workflow for you to work within, basically only doing kind of Chrome publishing from a desktop. And so we've expanded in terms of who we interoperate with well. The browser market has also changed over time too. So for example, Edge is actually just using Chromium under the hood to support, which means that it actually just operates the same as Chrome. So you can hit every major browser now in the market with WebRTC as well as with Wowza powering WebRTC. So we've had this increased accessibility in terms of your publishers and your players. A lot of folks talk to me about iOS, and I would call out, it's important to note, with iOS, Apple has locked it down so you can only use Safari browsers to playback or publish WebRTC. So if you're looking to do a workflow across all platforms, that's a big kind of good to know is you need to be publishing to Safari, and that's an Apple limitation, not a Wowza limitation or WebRTC. It's really focused on Apple only supporting WebRTC with Safari. The next one, which is a really big one, we get this use case a lot, is, hey, you know what? I want to use WebRTC for some delivery. This is popular in remote monitoring scenarios. Maybe you have IP cameras up. Maybe you're kind of looking to tap into a remote broadcast feed. So taking in RTMP or RTSP and going out with WebRTC is a supported workflow you can do with us. I'll get into some details in the demo time on if you need to do transcoding or if you just transmux. So we'll talk about that a little bit. And then the next one is publisher and player examples. So this is really helpful for you. We've been updating our GitHub repository. So if you look, there is some examples for you on different browsers for how you would structure your WebRTC code examples in JavaScript. We're actually going to update those again probably in the next couple weeks to show you how to use Adapter.js to have a single example in order to hit all your main browsers. So there's a lot going on with Wowza and WebRTC in terms of functionality and expanded use cases. And I'm going to demo that in a little bit, so in a couple minutes. In terms of supported use cases, where do we see our use case being really strong and where you should think about adopting WebRTC? First is in that personal video browser broadcasting use case. I need to easily get video from a source. My users don't know how to configure OBS. I just want to use the browser. WebRTC is a great option for that. When you think about either one-to-many streaming to that personal video use case, it's another really good use for WebRTC. Oftentimes you might be going out HLS with this, but it's a great way to get a source. The next is remote monitoring. So we have companies that are using us to control remote robots, and they want to be able to control those in real time. This is an RTSP to WebRTC type use case where you would use a transmuxing workflow. And what's really neat about this is you don't even need to change the audio codec, because a lot of times, sometimes with those remote monitoring use cases, you're just trying to do video only and see what's going on. So it's another really good use case to consider for WebRTC. And then the last one I'll call out is just hey, I want a bit more real-time latency on my stream. A lot of these users tend to, maybe you're in the auction business, maybe you're in some sort of transactional business type requirement for latency. I would call out that typically you don't have huge scale, and so you can deliver off a single server here, which is really useful. If you're looking at, trying to tune latency for tens of thousands of broadcasters, typically trying to tune the HTTP protocols is the right way to go. So that's a little bit of use case. Let's go to the next slide, and after this slide, I'll get into some demos for folks. So what's new? So I just talked about how you might do low latency for tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of viewers. That's when something like low latency HLS is really going to come into play. So we updated to the latest Apple spec that was released in January. We're going to show a demo of that a little bit later. So Jamie's going to show that demo with one of our new partners, THEOPlayer. So you'll be able to see that in action. In terms of when you could use this, though, from a market standpoint, it's really the second half of the year. Apple needs to ratify everything. It then needs to be able to get onto Apple devices in terms of a software update to support low latency HLS on public Apple devices. And then you're talking about, really being able to use that workflow. So we're going to continue to evolve our CMAF and low latency HLS capabilities for you, but it's going to be more second half of the year. You're going to see really a ton of movement in the marketplace and the ability to actually tap into some of those workflows in the second half of the year. But we do have an updated version of you now for you to play around with and test with if you have a player that can support it. On the SRT front, we did make some updates to SRT. What's really interesting with some of the parameters we exposed with SRT, you're on the latest now in terms of what you can do. And there's some great tuning parameters you can do for long-haul transport. So you can make some adjustments to make sure that you're sending a stream around the world and you can still have that power of SRT and have a really high-quality stream versus maybe if you were trying to do this with like an RTMP, it would just fall apart. So that's a great thing to play with if that meets your one-to-one transport use case. Definitely check out the SRT stuff. What is coming soon? So definitely more on WebRTC. We are doing some more work on packet loss handling in our WebRTC, doing some more work on adaptive encoding. We're doing some work in the transcoder that's really going to help with WebRTC. Some frame concealment work, some frame manipulation work. We do hope to look at doing some more compositing work in the second half of the year. I know a lot of people have talked to us about, hey, how can I do like massive group chat with Wowza, and you will need to use the transcoder and do compositing work. And so we're hoping to make that a feasible workflow for you by exposing more things in the transcoder to do that type of workflow. The next, is really multi-server management. We hear this request a lot. I want to better use Wowza Streaming Engine and manage my servers, make it easier on my use case, et cetera. So we're doing a lot on multi-server management capabilities, and look to that in the second half of the year. And then I already mentioned the CMAF stuff. So that is a quick update of everything. I know we want to jump into demos. Justin, did we want to trigger a survey question right now?
You're
My
on mute,
apologies,
Justin.
I'm on mute. Always happens. We wanted to do the survey actually after you did the demo,
Awesome.
just to give some time to people to type. But actually, it's a good thing you asked because I did not do the initial poll. So let me just launch that poll right now. And we just wanted to make sure everyone, just to get a little information about the people who are joining us here with this webinar. We were wondering, are you currently streaming live video? If so, what are you currently using? Do you use Wowza? And what industry will your product primarily service? So just want to toss that in right now before we start the demo. Actually, while people are answering that, Anthony, let's, I'm just going to stop sharing my screen and I'll let you switch over then.
Great. All right, so I will start sharing my screen. Justin, do we want to read out on that survey question or just jump into the demo?
I think we can just jump into the demo. I know
Awesome.
the answers to this aren't necessarily important to the people who are joining us. So.
All right, so I'm going to show you what I have set up here to just showcase. The first one is I'm just going to showcase some of that non-WebRTC to WebRTC type use case. Again, this could be a low latency broadcast to a small audience. You might be using a professional encoder like the ClearCaster. Or it could be an IP camera that is in the field, but you need to be able to see what's going on in that IP camera in real time. So here I have a ClearCaster. It's running my WebRTC demo broadcast. And if we were to jump into Wowza Streaming Engine, you could see, okay, here's my stream coming off the ClearCaster, just my stream right here. And so let's just jump in to showcase the playback scenarios here. So the first is just on the left. I have a THEOPlayer. Again, excited to be working more with them. Jamie will talk about it, but here's my HLS stream coming off that Wowza Streaming Engine. So awesome. I have an HLS stream going out that I could play. And then over here, I'm going to be playing back my WebRTC stream. You'll notice, so this is the Caminados view. And so these grapes right here inside the coal mine, you'll probably see that on the HLS view in about 30 seconds. So the WebRTC is real time here. Some really interesting use cases to think about. We had over the weekend a really large broadcaster that wanted to just see their multi-viewer in real time from their head end. And so what they decided to do is they actually just sent that feed to Wowza Streaming Engine on an Azure cloud instance. And then they were able to just allow their field reps or remote production work to be able to have a real-time view of what's coming into the head end into their broadcast facility. So like a really interesting use case there of WebRTC where you have HLS is your primary destination for viewers, but you're using WebRTC to see what's going on in real time. Alternatively, you could be, if you're going to a smaller audience, you could be using that WebRTC feed to the viewers. What I will call out is WebRTC uses Opus for audio. So if you're trying to get an audio and video feed to viewers, you'll need to transcode from AAC to Opus. Just the audio to transcode. So it's not a ton of compute power, but you will need to transcode to Opus for WebRTC delivery. The other thing I'd call out is browsers have different standards for what they can take as it relates to encoding profiles. So not everything accepts high, for example. They also don't take B frames. So if you're trying to go out WebRTC with video, don't encode with B frames, and we would recommend using like a main profile because you'll hit a broader browser acceptance rate in terms of being able to play it back. And so you might need to, if you're doing a high-end broadcast, maybe you would transcode that video to be able to have that constraints of no B frames as well as the main profile. So that is the demo of just, let's take a non-WebRTC source and go out WebRTC. The other one that I'll call out is, just to make sure we can do this. I might need to turn my video off here. I was sharing a lot of cameras here. So let's see if this ends up working if I do turn my video off. Here we go. So I'll publish this one. I might need to refresh it. Whoops. There you go. Just lost everything. Give me 1 second and I'll
We're
grab
only
it.
seeing the ClearCaster monitor at this point, so.
Sorry about that, Justin. Did you not see the videos that I was comparing?
No, we're only seeing, I think you're only showing Safari. So we're only seeing the ClearCaster monitor view.
Gotcha. Okay. What are you seeing?
Yes, now we're seeing
now?
much more, yes.
Oh, well, that's disappointing. I'll just do a quick overview of a little bit. So here you can see I'm doing WebRTC to WebRTC, so you can kind of see the hand waves and just the latency. So this would be, obviously WebRTC will be real time. You're really dealing with what you might have in between in terms of going to the server and back, etc. So that's a quick example of that. And then what I was showing earlier that I apparently wasn't actually showing was just the delta between being able to play back an HLS stream and a WebRTC stream. So just showing how you could be taking in an RTMP source and transmixing that and transcoding it. So my apologies on the demo setup and just sharing the wrong screen, but hopefully we were able to follow along a bit.
Well, I'll tell you what, let's leave this up and we can just take some questions that are coming in, but let's start with the poll, if you don't mind. I'm going to pull up a poll that we have for Wowza Streaming Engine. And please, while this poll is up, feel free to type questions that if you want to re-see something or something that was confusing to you. So the poll we have is asking, one, what's your overall reason for live streaming? And the second question being, when looking for a WebRTC solution, which additional benefit would be the most useful or relevant to your use case? So feel free to, I'm just going to leave that on the screen for a few minutes while we go into questions. And Jimmy had a question for you, Anthony, and that was he's looking for the recommended path from ultra low latency as Wowza shifts its focus. So do we have a current strategy to move from ultra low latency to something else?
Yeah, I think we have some good documentation there too. If we wanted to actually send that in the Slack from that, page on ULL ultra low latency. But the two things that I would just quickly summarize would be, if your audience size is small, I would really look at a WebRTC type workflow and use case. So if you were using the ultra low latency CDN to handle, wide-ranging geographies, global streaming or huge audiences, WebRTC might not be the best option for you. But in a lot of use cases, WebRTC for delivery is going to be a really, really good option to choose. The other thing that I would look at is looking at some of the things that we mentioned earlier, either tuning some HTTP-based protocols or really looking at low latency HLS as the second half of the year comes around. And we're going to do a demo of low latency HLS shortly, so you kind of be able to get a sneak peek at what you might be able to do with low latency HLS in Wowza.
All right. And Jimmy just wanted to clarify what you meant when you said small. How small would small be? A small audience.
Yeah, typically what I've seen for WebRTC is, doing your single server workflow where you're just handling load off a single server is going to be a really easy way to set up your stream and be able to broadcast. So you could handle hundreds easily on a single server, depending on how you spec the server itself. What I've also seen some people do, there's a webinar platform that's built on us that has some participants in real time and some participants not in real time. And what they actually do is they spec their server so that only a certain number of people get into the WebRTC sessions, and the passive audience stays on HLS. So you have some options even for scaling from a single server instance for delivery. But basically using a single server as origin and edge for a WebRTC workflow is going to be a pretty easy setup for you that will be able to accomplish to a pretty decent sized audience.
All right. And so, Jimmy, I hope that helps you out. Sai is asking, are you planning for adaptive bitrate streaming for VOD from MP4 as a source file?
So right now the focus is more on the live workflows. So what we're really hoping to have in a pretty good implementation is just a simple REM adaptive encoding from your publishers. So we're more focused on the live right now, and other workflows would be more in the second half of the year.
All right. And Alex is asking, what's the best option for high quality remote contribution video? Would it be SRT or WebRTC or CMAF ULL?
Yeah, so with contribution video, typically you're going to get the best quality doing something with SRT. So an encoder is going to be able to handle B frames, going to be able to spend some time really making that image quality look as good as possible, and then send that into your origin. For WebRTC, while you can get high quality out of a WebRTC encoding, there are some limitations in terms of how it handles B frames, because it's more focused on being real time than adding that maybe 1 second during the encoding process for quality. The other thing is WebRTC is going to be a browser-based method for encoding. So there's going to be some limitations in terms of your cameras, and the devices have limitations too. So if you're really focused on quality, I would definitely look towards a higher quality encoder and probably transporting with an SRT.
Okay. I'm going to ask a use case here that somebody's sending in. Todd Smith is asking, I'm in charge of our county's 911 center, mobile communication center, and we're trying to take any video that comes into the MCC, such as cameras on the vehicles and video from drone activity, and take that and broadcast that back to the 911 center, and they will be able to have control on where or who shares that with, such as county executives, county sheriff, deputies, state police cars. Have you ever had an agency utilize this for those kind of reasons?
Yeah, so it's a good question. I was actually, there's a great customer of ours that builds these for emergency centers. Carbine 911 actually participated in one of their webinars last week called Flatten the Curve, and had a bunch of folks within your industry at it. So I would look at Carbine 911 in terms of some of the solutions they provide. They are a company that is built on Wowza in the vertical. In terms of doing this yourself and building it with Wowza, it's very possible. How you would do it is you would be using Wowza streaming engine on, in some, secure setup. It could be, in a data center that you have on site, but likely a cloud instance of it. And then being able to deliver out with different protocols is really one of the advantages of why Wowza plays in here really well. So we do a good job of taking in different types of sources. So you can have different types of IP cameras all coming in to your instance there. And then you can be delivering those out in different ways, whether that be HLS or WebRTC to go down to maybe your dispatch center or to people in the field. In terms of securing those streams, you would need to be looking at something like a secure token for your HTTP workflows with HLS. And then with WebRTC, you can do unique things with like query strings to try to lock down those streams for WebRTC. It does get a little bit more complicated what you're trying to do. So I'm not sure the technical capabilities that live at the dispatch center. It could be something that's a really good project to work with the professional services side of Wowza to really nail that implementation. But something that is 100% kind of in the wheelhouse of how Wowza is used. Companies build that type of workflow today, and we work directly with companies to build it themselves too.
All right. And I realize we are already pushing the time, but I'm going to ask one more question here before we jump over, and that is from Greg. Can your WebRTC live video be encrypted for healthcare purposes? Curious if this can be used for telemedicine.
Yeah, so all WebRTC is delivered with SRTP, so it is an encrypted transport, encrypted content that the browser unencrypts. So we use SRTP for the delivery mechanism for the audio and the video, as well as it's negotiated in terms of a secure WebSocket. So you are going to pass, I think, your standards for security there, and that telemedicine type use case. Again, it's a really popular workflow, both in terms of being able to think about using WebRTC for it, but as well as companies coming to Wowza in that industry we fit really well with your security requirements and how you can control the infrastructure.
All right. Insigne, I hope that also helped answer that question. Moving on, because I know we are already into the middle of our time here, let's go to Wowza Streaming Cloud. Robert.
Hi, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Great. So luckily, some of the work that we've done is meant to make it very easy and very quick to do some operations. So my demo hopefully will be the quickest that I've ever given in a webinar. So it will be around WebRTC. As you can tell, Engine, which Cloud is built on, is doing a lot of work in WebRTC, and we're also extending that and making features available in Cloud to make it easier to use and faster for you to get streaming, particularly for those people who aren't terribly familiar with streaming. And if you have instructors or people out in the field who don't know how to set up an encoder, it's a great way for them to be able to stream. So effectively what we've added, as I've got there on the slide, is a browser-based streaming that's accessible directly within our live stream wizard. Makes it super easy. Justin did a video of this. I think it took him 66 seconds in order to be able to go from his first click to his last click and be live streaming to potentially tens of thousands or millions of people, tens of thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people. Just by clicking through and taking all the defaults on the wizard. So I will show that in a second. The second thing, so that's new. That was released in the last 2 weeks, and it's something that you can take advantage of right now if you're a Wowza Streaming Cloud customer. We also obviously are taking advantage of all the additional functionality that's coming from Wowza Streaming Engine, and as those new features are available, you'll be seeing additional WebRTC functionality coming in Cloud as well. So secondarily, the other thing that's been out a little bit longer is Wowza CDN on Fastly. What we've done is partnered with Fastly, one of the major CDN providers, and it gives us a lot more flexibility than we've historically had in the past. So it's allowing us to deliver via that, obviously, and we've had great luck, and they've been a great partner to work with. But in addition to that, it provides us with a lot of new functionality. And the first one of those that we're going to be able to release is live-to-VOD. So I'll be talking a little bit about that. That's not something that's readily available now, but if you're interested in that and would be interested in being a beta tester, be ready to send me an email, because we've got enough of that done that we're ready to let people start taking a look at that. Note also that there are some advantages that you'll already see with Fastly. When using Fastly at the moment, you will see, and note that's now our default option for a CDN. So if you go through one of our wizards, or you go in and you set up a new target, you'll see Fastly right at the front of the list. When you make that selection, the big benefit that you see right now is that the usage data is near instantaneous. It should take just a few seconds, and you'll understand what regions traffic is coming from. You'll understand how much traffic is being consumed. All that information is much more readily available. For those of you who are longer-term Wowza customers using Cloud, you know that sometimes that information was not terribly up to date, and sometimes it was lagging by a substantial amount of time. Fastly gives us that real-time access. And one of the things that Jamie's building on in that regard, Wowza also has a push in general in terms of getting a lot of insights and doing a lot of additional information to let you understand how your streams are running. This is one of those fundamental building blocks that we need to be able to pull that information in very quickly, so we can expose to you information about how your streams are performing, what people are doing, so that you can react to it in real time. Knowing about it minutes or hours later just doesn't do a lot of good. So Fastly provides us that building block. Live-to-VOD is also something they provide, and I'll show how that works in a second. So now I'm going to give what may be the fastest Wowza demo I will ever give, because like I said, Justin was able to do this in 66 seconds. Let me share my screen and find the right window. Sorry about this. I expected it to be right up front, and it's not.
No problem. Hey, while you're looking for it, Anthony, someone was asking when the next version of Wowza Streaming Engine is going to be released.
So we hope to have another version out this quarter in the second half. I think if you wanted to get access to some of our betas, I'd sign up for our beta program, and you can get some kind of early previews of what's going on.
Awesome. Appreciate the response.
Great.
Sorry, Robert.
No problem. It took me a second to find the screen. Too many windows open. So this is the flow. This is meant to be as simple as possible. And again, this is for those customers that we're starting to get that are, right now in particular, where everybody's remote, we have people who don't have the experience necessary to set up an encoder or use OBS. So we tried to provide them absolutely the easiest way to be able to set up a stream, hand someone a URL, and that person can be a broadcaster. So a lot of people that are, teachers or doing webinars or anything like that, you can just hand them the URL and away you go. So here it is. If anybody wants to run a clock, I'd be interested. I'm going to hit add live stream. and I'll put in a quick name here, which is probably the slowest part here. And then I'm just going to go with defaults. California is fine as our nearest region. I do have to choose here web browser, WebRTC as my source. So I'll choose that. That's the one necessary step that you have to take. And for the rest of these, I'm just going to start accepting defaults. I don't need to be adding any new tiles, any logo, or anything like that. I just keep walking my way through this without making any changes other than that selection of WebRTC, and I'm done. And so now we obviously have a stream that's been configured but not started. I'll go ahead and start that. This will take just a second in order to get started. But as you can see in the background, one of the new things that you've probably not seen before, of course, we have the hosted page URL that we've always had, which is what you're going to hand off to your viewers. But we now also have a WebRTC Publish page. And as soon as this transcoder is started, which will take a couple seconds, I'm just going to open this Publish page. And you'll be able to see this page that's readily available to everyone that anyone can publish from. So we recommend, obviously, you hand off that link. Now, you'll notice that there are a lot of parameters in that link. So what we're doing, because this is hosted not behind a sign-in specifically for Wowza Streaming Cloud, is we're passing all the information that's necessary in order to connect back to Wowza Streaming Cloud. So I will open this page with that one click. You will see me again from a different camera angle. Sorry that you're seeing my lighting and my green screen. But now all I need to do is hit publish. I obviously can go in, I can select a different microphone. I've got several cameras and several microphones. I can go in and select a different video source. But at this point, and I chose the same camera, I just hit publish. And that's all there is to it. We've provided for a convenience a live streaming URL. Again, this is what you'd hand off to anybody who's viewing it. But with that one URL, I can hand this to anybody who wants to publish, and they're able to publish into our platform. When I toggle back to Wowza Streaming Cloud, you'll see the video thumbnail. It's coming in via WebRTC and ready to go out via whatever mechanism that you've configured. Note right now, the primary use case is still for that large distribution. So this stream in particular is configured that it's pulling the WebRTC in, and then we're taking and we're transcoding and distributing it via HLS. So whether you've got one viewer, not one viewer, you've got a small audience or a very large audience, this is going out via that CDN for mass distribution. So if any questions about that, please stick in the chat, and this is available to you now. In the interest of time, since we still have 2 more speakers, let me move on real quickly and stop sharing here and show you and talk a little bit about our live-to-VOD that is on its way. And if you're interested in beta testing, I would be very interested in hearing from you about that. So Justin, if you can bring the slides back up.
Yeah, I'm also going to bring the poll up if we're ready for the poll. Are we ready for the poll, Robert?
Go back a couple slides.
Sure, here you go.
That's the one other thing I wanted to talk about was live-to-VOD. So this is a function that or the feature that we've got in process right now. We have our R&D team working on it, and we would expect to have this done by June. With a month left, we are ready to be able to allow people to beta test. And effectively what we're doing is, as the stream comes in, we transcode it and then we write out HLS and all of the different renditions. And what we're doing is rather than having that being something that's transient, it's something that we're keeping around. So what ends up happening is, just like you're used to with Wowza Streaming Cloud, you go in, you configure it, you get a URL for people to be able to stream live. What we're doing then, if you make that selection in the course of setting things up, we're also having a second URL, which is effectively the recorded version of it, but it's still an HLS transcoded stream. So you still have all the adaptive bitrate. You've still got all the whatever functionality. If you've done anything special in your HLS, it is literally the exact same thing as what you had when you did your live stream. That's just being stored as a larger HLS, stored as that HLS with all those different renditions, rather than it being something that's much more transient. So we give you a separate URL, since obviously if you really reuse that transcoder or that stream, you would overwrite it. So there's a new URL created each time that you run the stream if you've configured it that way, and then you can hand that out. And what it does is it allows people to watch that stream after the fact, after it's been streamed live, and can watch that at any given time. Note, we do have functionality in there for you to be able to effectively make it live or make it so that it's not available. So if you want to be able to set it, you run through it, and you want to be able to not have it be available for a week, or you want it to be available, you can toggle it on and off. So you do have that functionality of turning it on and off, and then obviously you can delete it as well. This is a functionality that is dependent on the way that we interact with Fastly. So this is that first feature I was talking about, that Fastly provides us that we didn't have previously. It does obviously consume some storage. We're writing out that entire manifest and the playlist and all those chunks out to storage. So that's one additional thing that will be, stored, and storage costs are very low, but do know that that's going to happen. And then when it's restreamed, it comes through exactly the same mechanism it did when it was a live stream, and utilizes that CDN traffic the same way. As I said, targeted for June, something that we expect to have available, frankly, in the next probably 6 weeks. And if you have interest in being a beta tester, we would be very happy to let you kick the tires now, take a look at it, and see if it serves your needs. So with that, in the interest of time, let me wrap up and see if there are a few questions that we can get answered before we move on to the next speaker.
All right. Well, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to launch the poll here. So if anyone could answer the poll while we're going through questions, the two questions being, how often do you need to stream from a browser? And the second being, what's your typical audience size per stream? One question that people did have quite often, Robert, was, how do I join the beta for this?
Send an email to me. I will get that. By the end of this, I will provide that for you to be able to have an email address to send to. It's if you've got, and you can go ahead.
If anybody wants to send it via webinars@wowza.com, you can always send it to me, and I will forward it to Robert. So.
Okay. And as you can see, my first and last name in the Zoom, you can just put my first name dot my last name at wowza.com, and that's the email address.
All right. Now we have a lot of questions. I'm going to try to focus on the ones pertaining to what you've been talking about. One question George has, live-to-VOD, can we embed it in a player like THEOPlayer?
Yes, it's just, you've got an HLS playlist that you can use for whatever purpose. So okay. Whatever player you're comfortable with, you can certainly pull that, and it's just standard old HLS.
Another question we have from Usman is, can we fetch the WebRTC Publish Page using an API?
Fetch the page. It's just I'm not sure. You can set up a WebRTC stream via the API. That's certainly possible. The page itself is actually, if you looked at the URL, not something that's behind the sign-in for Wowza Streaming Cloud. So that is available to you as well. If you have specific questions, please let me know. You can set up a WebRTC stream. If you wanted to be able to create that page, you'd need to know what parameters to pass it if you just wanted to hand somebody out a URL. But those are certainly all parameters that you have access to.
So
and I'll chime in, if you want to build your own page, you might want to check out our GitHub repository. We have some examples of pages there that you could download and use that to build your own WebRTC example.
All right, but Robert, you're saying they could get maybe the URL via the API?
The URL is fairly static. The thing they would need to do is populate that URL with the parameters that they could fetch through other API calls in order to do it. So we don't have an API call that provides you the one URL with all the parameters appended. You'd need to append those together yourself.
All right. Sharab is asking, live-to-VOD, is that 2 URLs? Could it be a single one, or is this a fixed setup?
Every time that there's one URL for the live stream, and obviously if you have something that's a recurring event, you'll continue to use that same URL over and over and over again. Then every time you're creating a recording of it, let's say that you've got a class that runs weekly, there's one that will always be for the live stream, and then there'll be one for each individual class that's produced, and it won't be reused because we don't want it to be overwritten. So you'll have one that will be static, and then one that will be created every time that you run that stream again.
All right. I'm just going to take a few more. I do realize there's a lot of questions coming in, guys. I'm sorry I can't answer them all, but we do have only about 40 minutes left here. One is, when will Wowza Streaming Cloud offer a backup ingest point for live streams like used to be available via Akamai CDN?
We are actively looking, or I am actively looking, for an alternative to that. At the moment, we don't have a mechanism for being able to do that backup stream. There are several methodologies that are under consideration, but right now we don't have that simple that you could push 2 of the same RTMP streams in perhaps and have them either choose the better one or fail over if one of them stops completely. That's something that Akamai previously provided, and as is being asked, and everybody obviously knows, Akamai discontinued that service.
And I think these questions are slowly moving into our next point. And I'm just going to repeat them both because I think they're probably to Jamie, which is Alex is asking, love the new Fastly. The real-time stats are so useful. Will we get more stats on the panel? And then Patrick asks, what type of data is available from Fastly besides just the viewership and bandwidth? Is it possible to get the types of devices or operating systems users are watching on? Would it be possible to get a dashboard with extra information in cloud? And I think that's kind of similar.
At the moment, I'll add, then I'll let Jamie take the follow-up question. Right now, the information that we're exposing has to kind of be is a superset, or is the common denominator between the different platforms that we have. So right now there isn't that access to specifically that information, at least through the dashboards. In terms of other information, there may be a way to access that, and we certainly are. And what Jamie can talk a little bit about is how we're making that information and all the information that we collect more useful for you to be able to troubleshoot via the Insights project that we're working on, or product that we're working on. Jamie, do you want to speak to that for a second?
Sorry, I was on mute. Yeah, to the point of the data, and I was going to show a couple things to talk about that when it's my turn. As Robert said, we're looking at a subset of the data from Fastly today. We'll look to continue to grow that through some things I'll be talking about in a moment. And as far as understanding more on the client side, that'll be part of our initiative as well that I'll mention. So yes, you can look forward to these things coming. Again, I can elaborate when I speak next.
Okay. That being said, let's move on. Let's move to you, Jamie.
All right. Thanks, Justin. So yeah, so we've been working very hard for a little bit of time here now, last 6 to 9 months on what we would consider trying to increase our visibility with our products and services, and through the lens of monitoring and analytics. We understand that customers want high quality, high reliability, high performance, and so we are looking at, and we'll continue to look at, ways to provide access to real-time data that's actionable, not just real-time data that's there and meaningless or complicated to understand, but things that you can use towards your business objectives, and ultimately, as it says here, increasing engagement or reducing cost. We're thinking well beyond the idea of log files here. For example, we're looking at what I consider to be a multi-dimensional scalable solution. That means that we're looking across the entire workflow for streaming and all the workflow components that are involved in that, and across, in particular with live, across what we call, or I'm calling, the broadcast life cycle. So not just while you're doing your live event, but before you do your live event and after you do your live event, how can we make sure that your satisfaction is at the maximum? And ultimately, we think this says here is going to help deliver a higher confidence that the streams are working correctly, especially with live. When it's live and you have maybe an hour or two live event, if you have an issue, your event can be over before you figure out where that problem lies and that you resolve it. So providing an effective and timely manner for troubleshooting and resolving issues is really key. So pinpointing where a problem might lie and helping you with advice on what we think that problem in that area might be is really important. And again, as I said, this all helps to better ensure the things that matter most with your live streaming or even on-demand streaming, which is the idea of reliability and scale and performance and quality. And as I said, beyond log files and things like that, we're looking at a more intelligent and automated approach. I use the 4 words you see there: inspect, interpret, predict, and prevent. We're not just going to send a bunch of data to you in real time and let you fend for yourself. We will be providing over time more and more tools for helping you understand where those issues lie, how to fix them, how to even prevent them. Look at trend analysis and say, hey, my bandwidth for my encoder is kind of on its way down. What can I do to improve that first mile connection or quality, and so forth, as an example. And then even take automated actions down the road. How do you ultimately say, okay, when this data point hits this threshold, I want this action to happen so that I can correct a mistake before it becomes catastrophic. So, for a situation. So with that said, and I'll show it when I show some demo stuff. We've been working on a bunch of initiatives in our different product set or across the product set. As Robert mentioned, part of the Fastly data integration gives us real-time access to data. We've actually been collecting data, and we'll collect data more and more from all our products and services in real time through an infrastructure we've been building out, and then making that data available back to you. In cloud, the best example today, and in combination with use of Fastly as a CDN, is the usage statistics. So the viewer and bandwidth and geo data that you see in there is all instantaneous, nearly instantaneous, I should say, as far as the consumption that's happening with your live streams. So that's really great. We had some delays before in the matter of hours, and if your event is only an hour long and you want to see how it's going during it, that's really tough to see. So as an example. But we realize a lot of you are using Wowza Streaming Engine in the market today, and so we are. It's what I've got up on the slide here. We've been working on ways to get that data out in real time from Engine, and how we might realize providing access to that data for customers, and that's kind of why we've got this slide up. And what I'm talking about now is an alpha access for a limited customer set to participate in this ability to get this data, kind of look at this data and say, yes, this data is important to me. This is the data that I need, and here's how I plan to use it, and get that feedback to further iterate on our initiatives around getting real-time data to customers across our whole product portfolio. So an alpha, it's basically a module you would snap into your Engine instances, and then we're providing visualization through Kibana today, which is a visualization tool that sits on top of Elasticsearch, which is today part of our core infrastructure for collecting and storing this data. We're looking at customers using Wowza Streaming Engine as an origin and publishing out to destinations like CDNs or direct playback off of those engines instances. And again, the idea here is we're not necessarily going to provide Kibana as a visualization tool down the road. That could be something we do, but what we're trying to do with the visualization piece is really quickly iterate, get feedback on the data that people see that participate in this alpha phase, and give us that feedback so that we can iterate on this quickly, and then get this out to more Engine customers in different ways, get it out in our cloud service, and even consider for ClearCaster, and just, again, holistically trying to give that uniform way of getting data out of our products. Something you might say is, how does this differ from the Java API or the REST API in Engine? And those things can be used to facilitate getting this data in the same way. But again, as we speak about our core initiatives of correlating data across the entire workflow and looking across the entire broadcast lifecycle, that's where this becomes important. We will be correlating this data, not just, it's not just going to be, here's my data for my single engine, but across engines, instances that might be using a collective origin infrastructure, edge infrastructure, as well as I have Engine going to cloud, as an origin, or I have ClearCaster going to Engine going to cloud. How do we piece all that together and correlate that data for you so you can make sense of that data? Often, as an example, when a player fails at playing a live stream, it's not necessarily the player that's the problem, right? It could go all the way back to the first mile in the source, or it could be somewhere in the middle. And so that's why correlating that data is important, and that's the distinction I would make here for now on the notion of getting this data in this method versus the Java or REST API. On the right, I've just got some high-level details about the detail that we're going to provide in that output. So we're looking at what we call events and stats and streams. So we'll be looking at server-level data, stream-level data, aggregate server-level data across multiple engines, and again, providing that through Kibana, and how do people look at that and give us feedback.
All right. So shall we take a look at your demo?
Yeah, let's do
I
that.
will stop sharing my screen.
Cool. All right, hopefully you can see this. Again, I'm in Wowza Streaming Cloud at the moment. I can't show you the impact of this showing up in real time. Trust me, if you're using cloud and you want to see that, it's very easy. Just set up a stream and you can see that. Just in a sense of time right now, I want to emphasize my other demos, but this is the usage data that I was talking about with Fastly that Robert was talking about earlier, where this data will show up in near real time for you as you run a live stream using Fastly. So that's the great part, and that's under the hood. Our Wowza Insights infrastructure that's collecting and storing and then sending that data back to cloud that makes that possible. So really want to start to show you the dashboards that we plan to show to customers for who participate in this alpha. And again, if there's interest in the alpha, please, you can send email to me or to the group here, and we can talk about that too. We're getting started with this alpha as early as next week.
So again, you can also just send it to webinars@wowza.com. That's the email that you get to sign up to join this webinar. So if you need to just send something, an email back to us, just do it that way.
Exactly, thank you. So I'm running an engine on my local laptop. That's causing my fan to go crazy right now. But just, with a quick set of configuration in Log4j and then server XML in Engine, you can then have, basically, you can see all these events that are posting here, basically out of Engine and going into our infrastructure for Wowza Insights. We just have a simple module that we install here, a jar file, and then everything's good to go. That's just, again, reflecting on how this gets set up. And then these dashboards reflect what you can see for that data coming out. So again, this is my engine here. I'm looking at an aggregate across multiple engines though. So, and again, we're talking about server level data, stream level data that we're showing here to give people, again, the notion of what could be possible, and then giving us feedback on, do I like that data? I'd like to see this data as well. I'd like to see the data you show me in this way. I just want it through an API. I just, I like the visualizations, but, I'm going to, can you create those and just let me put them in my interfaces? There's lots of options for how we see customers consuming the data. But this is a quick way to iterate on what's coming out of Engine and move forward on the progress of making that data available. So, we're looking at, again, a variety of information here, modules that are running on those Engine instances, the versions of that engine that are running, the number that are running there. One important thing is to look at, well, I've got a cute map too. Everyone loves a map. So where my engine's running and where the heat map shows is where data is flowing out of that engine or set of engines. Errors. So this is from a lot of our testing. That's why you see a count that's so high. But again, frequent error messages could be informative to people for what they're doing and trying to fix problems. And then we have a bunch of stream level information. So what's coming in, what's going out, what am I seeing by protocol and codec information, and then some server performance pieces down below, and then some client playback pieces. So this is indications of actual playback from the engines that are in this list. So I go back up. We're then going to have you be able to drill that down into a single engine view as well. It's very similar data. However, at a single engine view, you're also going to be able to see more server level pieces like you might see in the streaming engine manager or user interface today, just things like bytes in, bytes out, and things around memory and CPU usage and things like that. So, and then we'll have a stream view, which will have very similar data again, but and then the ability to filter the engines up above to what you want to see, but a lot of information more about what's going in and out of a server for a particular set of streams or stream. So again, this is an early stage here. We are trying to get feedback, trying to get people to contribute and give us quick feedback so that we can iterate on this and move forward on our bigger objectives of getting real-time data access, through API, through interfaces down the road. Somebody mentioned a cloud interface, right? And if you've been on previous webinars, I've shown in some cases a proof of concept prototype, a real-time dashboard, where we've strung it together with ClearCaster and Cloud and Fastly and WowzaPlayer, and what you could visualize ultimately across the workflow for your data. That's a great example of what's going to be possible with an API or visualization tools, including stuff that may end up in our cloud service down the road. So.
All right. Hey, I'm going to pop in the poll here so people can take a look at the poll while we also, and I have too many windows open. Not sure if anyone else is having that problem or it's just me, but I'm betting everybody has that problem. Opening the poll right now, and the two poll questions are, I need to access real-time data and then choose which ones you think work for you. 2, I prefer to access real-time data through a again, what you'd like to select here. These are all multiple choice. And 3, I want to access real-time data for, and again, it's multiple choice here. Feel free to type that in while we answer some questions. Kevin Cross is asking, he has a basic reporting question. He's new to this all, but he loves the service so far from Wowza. He wants to know if he can set up a standard weekly report on user stats that's emailed to him, or does he need to go to a reporting page and request something each week?
So I can let the respective product managers talk about their products. We don't do any scheduling that ends up in an email today. These are all pieces you have to get out of the API or go through the user interfaces.
Kevin,
Yeah.
if you could please type in maybe which product you're using, and then we can answer the question specifically to that. I'm going to go to the next question then until Kevin answers that. Oh, it is Cloud? Okay.
Yeah,
Well, there
you'd
you go.
have to interrogate it as Jamie said via API. You can pull the information out pretty easily, but there need to be some scheduled job on your end. We don't have something that does that periodically and sends that to you. But that's an interesting feature idea. I will think about that and think about getting that into our backlog.
All right. And just so you guys know, the voice of God you just heard was Mac. I want to thank Mac and Alex for being here and answering all the questions coming in. There are a lot of questions you guys have. Hopefully we can answer some of them live like we're doing now. But Mac and Alex, thanks again. Zoran's asking, how about live streaming concurrent unique viewers? Didn't see it in live analytics.
So the data in Cloud will show that. There are interfaces in Engine too that will show that, and the APIs can all provide that to you. We intend through the Wowza Insights initiatives, and I wish I could show the real-time dashboard right now. We do have the notion of getting real-time viewer counts as a key metric, what I call kind of a quick pulse check metric across a workflow for whatever that workflow is or whatever player that is for customers. So part of our initiatives around insights include the notion of getting client-side analytics out. CDN and client, meaning player analytics, are very popular today, right? There's a lot of companies doing that, and we plan to, for all the players, because we have as a player, but we have our own where we have compatibility with all the major players in the industry, and I'll talk about that when I talk about THEOPlayer as an example in a second. We have, or we will be working on the ability to have the client-side analytics come out, and that would include viewer counts. We can also do that from the edge servers as well. So.
And one more question before we move on then is from Keith. Can custom events be created and tracked?
Not sure what the context of event here is. Yeah. So I don't know if that's a live event or that is some sort of
trigger.
Trigger, yeah, exactly. So I don't know if you can, Keith, if you can clarify in the question and answer pod.
Well, we can, the other question Serbian has is, can we somehow pass a user ID for each viewer to the stream and get back a list of user IDs who watch the stream?
So again, I think with respect to product managers might want to answer that. Yeah.
You don't have, the most we're going to get is something like, unless you've got something that your application is doing, that you've got a paywall or you've got some way of being able to correlate that information, the best we're going to get is, location and maybe IP address. But in terms of specific, and even that would take a lot of drilling down into it. So you don't have the concept of a user that's logging in unless you've got something else that's providing a framework that you've issued them a token or you've done something in order to have that tracking. So The answer in general is no, unless you're going to build something in order to be able to track that.
What I would say with Insights though is we plan, we're looking at within Wowza and outside of Wowza multiple data sources to be able to correlate and tie that together. So to Robert's example of a paywall where you knew people logged in and you had a token protected URL that you presented them to watch content or whatever, we will be working on ways to correlate that data. So you can say, well, I know this person logged in and they watched this, and then here are the stats over here for the consumption. So yes, essentially you could piece that together down the road.
All right. Well, Keith hasn't answered, so let's move forward. And it looks like we're going to be going over the 1 hour here because I need Dan to be able to talk about ClearCaster Pro. So let's just jump through the next parts here, and hopefully we can get to that as soon as possible.
I'll keep this really quick. Some of you may or may not know that we have decided to end of life Wowza Player and the Wowza Go Coder SDK. We realize that this is maybe an unfortunate situation for you, but we're on to bigger and better things, better experiences, and really want to emphasize that. And so we are working on a partnership basis, referral basis right now with browser-based playback and SDK broadcast and playback vendors. And so one of those, so a bunch of slides here, we can probably jump through this. If you have questions about this end of life, please reach out. There is a product notification page that you can find from Wowza.com. You can email webinars. The other one is SMCR. If you have a specific, SMCR at Wowza.com. If you have a specific question about that end of life or sunset, we're calling it. The thing I wanted to show, well, really, if you have those questions, just let us know. And again, we have professional services that can help as well. So yeah, Justin, you can go to the next slide. This does apply to the SDK as well, as I said. So, and we can work with you on this. Their product notification page has the dates for this, and essentially the end of life is the beginning of next year. So for both. So, but with that said, if I could share, I'm going to show, so we're doing great things with a partner called Theo, a major leading player vendor in the industry. They do a bunch of what they call SDKs for all kinds of needs across all the platforms for playback. This is the portal that they have, and I'm just going to jump real quick through this Notion with a few clicks and a few customizations around the formats and the interface and all kinds of things in here. You can basically set up a player. You hit next, you hit publish, and this will begin to build this player. Now I'm not going to wait for that. I'm going to say that I would encourage you to look at the demo zone they have there. There's a lot of different scenarios they support that work with Wowza today, and these are great examples for how to see what we're, as part of bringing you a better experience and bringing you playback pieces that can do more with Wowza. These are great examples for that, and I would encourage you to look at that. I'm going to show you two examples. I have a live stream out my window that I'm starting right now. Hopefully if it starts, yes. And, basically once you get done building that player, you just basically I put this up in S3, but you're putting the assets up in a hosted environment. Kind of like what you would take with an embed code from Wowza Player and put it on a page. And then basically plug your URL in and you hit play. And that's looking on my window. The other piece that we're working with them on, which is really great, we're working with THEOPlayer on a bunch of initiatives, as Anthony mentioned, is low-latency HLS. So it requires the player to do a bunch of changes to support it. Requires CDNs to do a bit of work too in some cases. So we're working with Fastly in this case on this. And then, of course, we're working on our side with the packaging side in Wowza Streaming Engine, and then eventually Wowza Streaming Cloud. But we have a test stream up that's working on the early stages or the kind of mid stages of the spec ratification. And I'm going to hit play here, and let's watch our favorite Big Black Bunny. We got a time clock embedded in here. And if you look at that compared to the clock on my screen, we're looking at about 2.5 seconds. So this is really good progress.
All right.
So
hey, do you know if THEOPlayer supports multi-channel audio?
They do. I believe there is something in the demo zone for that.
Okay. I don't think we need to show people.
If not, I can come back around on that. No, I'm not going to show it, but yes, they do. And they may have a demo in that demo zone. If not, we can come around on that question and answer it.
All right.
So there you go.
Well, thanks for all that information. I'm excited to see more what's going on with THEOPlayer. So that'll be huge. And now, Dan, ClearCaster Pro update.
Thanks very much, Justin. I assume you can hear me well?
Yes.
Okay, great. Well, there's lots of new things in ClearCaster. We're actually about to have our 8th software release this year, which is pretty incredible. But some of you might be surprised by that top bullet there, because it really is a massive shame that the Olympics got delayed this year, as it would have been amazing to see that sort of 8K showcase of technology and what's possible as a viewing experience. Having an 8K static image that you can endlessly zoom into, or see the benefits of having 120 frames per second captured at high resolution. That would have just been breathtaking. But 8K isn't just about those high-end sporting events. What we're seeing is a lot of demand for virtual reality now. Those 360 concerts, they absolutely require an 8K pixel tile to work with. So to encode all of those pixels mean you need a lot of encoding power. And also you're seeing a lot of these social media stars now using red cameras shooting at 8K. So why shouldn't these streams be live? It's kind of an interesting trend we're seeing. So what we were going to showcase at NAB was our 8K encoding platform, which incredibly had 5 GPUs installed into the system just to meet the processing requirements of all those pixels, right? And imagine we needed a special motherboard to host those 5 GPUs and pass all that data through the bus, which is pretty exciting. So unfortunately, I can't show you an 8K demo here today because of the platform we're on, but I have got lots of other things to show you, which are going to be equally as exciting. First, one of the big ones, and I'm going to go in and show you a demo of this, is now the ability that we can actually toggle social media endpoints in real time as the broadcast is live. So this means if you're broadcasting to Facebook and YouTube, you might want to not have the Twitter feed starting just as the rest of the broadcast do, just to meet their SLAs. So I'll show you that in action, so we can talk more about that as we go down. I'm really excited because the Facebook team have actually allowed me to show you the new graphics engine that's going to be in Facebook. So I'm going to give you a demo of that. So I won't talk too much about that on the bullet, but we are going to be able to support that within ClearCaster, which is pretty exciting. And of course, LinkedIn are making huge waves with their live service recently. And I'm really proud to say that we're going to be supporting all of the streaming options that they have, including pages and events in the very near future. So we're pretty excited about that. Anthony touched earlier on in the presentation about SRT, that's a Secure Reliable Transport Alliance. As you know, Wowza is a founding member of that, so you can guarantee that we're always going to make sure we've got all of those latest updates in place. So this means that we're doing really long distances. Not many people know that ClearCaster is actually an ingest and an egress capable encoder when it comes to SRT. So that's really, really cool. And then finally, I guess it would be really cool to just finish on the fact that we've just done a lot of work on 608 encoding for captions. This means if you've got old DVDs that you want to encode and transmit those out with embedded captions, we can now read those actual embedded caption files in the image. This is going back, 10, maybe even 20 years. So the more vintage amongst us can really appreciate those workflows. So if we can skip on to the next slide. So something that we've really noticed as well, there's been a huge demand for ClearCaster recently, as you can imagine, really down to its simplicity and ease of use. And one of the things people forget is you can actually connect an HDMI display to the back of the ClearCaster and then get a real-time either engineering or talent view output. This is really, really useful. So this gives you, great confidence when you're doing broadcast to see actually what the end users are seeing, and if there's any problems with the video encodes that are happening, obviously, in real time. So to enable that, you just go into broadcast, check that engineering, enable engineering view, and away you go, which is great. So last slide. So finally, another great benefit of the system before actually getting to start using it is the ability that once you've bought the system, you've installed it, you can do all your firmware and software updates remotely. I cannot emphasize how useful this is. So imagine you've got your ClearCaster in an equipment rack, it's in a church or even a courthouse. The ability not to have to physically either find a USB, format it to FAT32, install an image, to upgrade the software, that is a huge selling point. So that's enough of the slides. I think we should get in and actually look at the demo itself.
I can attest I update the ClearCaster on a regular basis, so I really appreciate that I can do that actually right from the hardware itself or from through the browser.
Yeah, well, that's what we're looking at now. Anthony was showing this image of the encoder that we've got working here now. Again, these are all the systems that I have in my demo fleet at the moment. One is obviously transmitting live, and the other one's ready to be worked on. But what I wanted to show you first, really, was the ability to toggle on and off these broadcasts. So you can see in the monitor view here, we're actually at the moment going to both YouTube and Facebook. But let's say I wanted to turn those off, one of those off for whatever reason. You can now see we have these buttons on the side here. Let's, in this case, turn off YouTube. Even though the broadcast is going, I now have the ability to toggle on and off those individual endpoints. And this is so useful. I can't tell you how many customers have come up to me and thanked me for putting that into the system. And this is also true for ABR stacks as well. You can actually go in and turn off individual layers inside your adaptive bitrate ladder, which is pretty cool. But what I was teasing you with earlier was talking about graphics. So I know a lot of you know that the system's capable of rendering its own graphics thanks to Singular Live, one of our partners. But what if you want to do something more complicated than just a simple slate or a graphic that you'd like to work with? Maybe we want to do something a little bit more advanced. A lot of people are always asking me about polls, or maybe they want to look at graphics or scoreboards. So we're getting into this sort of environment. Here's a football match. What happens is you may want to read that metadata and maybe put scores up in real time. So as you can see, this metadata is coming into the system. Give it a second, and there you go. Here come the scores. These type of graphics are great to be able to work with. And really what makes your live streams that you're doing from ClearCaster look so professional is the ability to have graphics. So of course, as I mentioned, we work with Singular Live, and this is Singular Live Studio. This just allows me to basically have a shot box of effects. So I can go in, literally just click on any graphic that I want, and then generate those live on top of the stream. So this is a really good set of functionality that we have. But this is the sort of headline feature that I was going to show you. Facebook is now actually about to have very similar functionality to this. So I'm obviously in my Facebook streaming area, and I'm sure you're used to having polls and asking questions inside those Facebook streams. But what's new, if I actually go to a page which I've got specially whitelisted from the Facebook team, we go in and look at this, we now have a graphics option as well. So what this allows me to do is pick various preset tiles or styles, sorry, that have been built into the system. And then I can go in and design various bugs, intros. Ticker is one I like because this is new. And it's that simple. You can generate as many of these as you want, and then you can start publishing them, and you can see the graphic over here is now generating this in real time. So that's something new. Obviously, we keep a very close relationship with Facebook. We love those guys. We love working with them. So I'd like to thank them for letting us show that. So that, because I know we're very short of time, I managed to cover everything I needed to do in basically 8 minutes. So 2 minutes back on the schedule. Back to you.
All right. Well, let me switch over the screen then. Give me 1 second here. And I also want to, let's get into that poll. There we go. So bringing up the poll, we do have a few questions for people before we start answering questions. And these are, 1, do you plan to use LinkedIn Live? 2, what new features would you like to see in ClearCaster Pro? And that's a multiple choice question. So some questions coming in. 1 is, can we export a time code signal that some client can sync to timed events?
Is this a ClearCaster question?
I believe this is a ClearCaster question. This was asked when you were showing things off.
So actually, one of the previous updates, we have actually allowed support for actually reading in timecode off the SDI signal, and then that's passed through down the signal chain, depending on what the output format is. If it's capable of understanding timecode, we will pass that on. And I think this is one of the workflows we did is actually passing timecode up to Wowza Streaming Cloud, as I remember, Robert, and the whole Wowza ecosystem supports that timecode now.
All right. And James is asking, can you leverage both Facebook graphics and Singulars simultaneously in a broadcast using ClearCaster Pro?
Okay, that's a really good question. So the answer is it just depends how you configure the ClearCaster. So obviously it has universal mode and Facebook mode. If you actually looked at that Facebook graphics demo I showed you, it's just generating an HTML5 output. So it's a link. So just in the same way as you'd have a link with Singular Live, you could put that into a broadcast. You can't currently have two separate, or the same broadcast using two separate sets of graphics. So you'd have to have two ClearCasters if you wanted to overlay two different sets of graphics. But you can of course do that, and we support all the primary and backup feeds for all the social media platforms that have that functionality available. So yeah, you could easily do two separate graphics, no problem. You just have to buy more ClearCasters.
All right. And someone's asking, and I think they're talking about Singular, but they wanted to know where they can access that application, singular
Yeah,
application
sure.
you're
I
showing.
think one of the best things they can do is just email me, and I'll hook them straight up to the Singular Live guys. They're great guys. They're based out of Burbank. They got offices in London as well. So probably email you, Justin, with those questions, and then I can pass on their contacts.
Right. Once again, you can just email webinars@wowza.com, and that's the email that got sent to you in order to join this webinar, and I'll definitely forward it to the right place. By the way, Leanne was asking something about augmented reality on a page used for viewing. I'm not sure if you got your question answered or not. If you can go into more detail about which product you're thinking about, please let me know and we can try to answer that now. Alex is asking, can ClearCaster take live captions from a local operator and embed them for streaming out via Wowza Cloud?
So typically what happens if you're using a stenographer, you'd normally have a device, keyboard sort of computer thing, which they'd be typing into, and then those are embedded into the SDI stream, which then of course the ClearCaster would capture that. You don't have a separate metadata stream typically in those type of operations. And of course, as I've already said, we support 608 and 708 captions in the system as well. So that's normally a product upstream of where the ClearCaster is working.
All right. And the last question we have by Seven is, would the ticker that you showed in Facebook also appear in a recording?
Yes, absolutely, if that's the way you want to go. So basically that Facebook tool, every live video that you upload to Facebook is actually creating a VOD asset in the Facebook environment. And then any graphics that were embedded by that tool would obviously be embedded into that video stream.
All right. And I think that's all the questions we've got. So appreciate everyone. Yes, sorry, I'm just making sure here. Somebody's still asking about a time code signal, but I think we've already answered that. You've answered about client sync to time events. So for those of you who need to contact us, here's some information for sales support. You can check out our pricing plans, and there is a URL to contact our technical support. I want to thank everyone once again for joining us. Robert, Dan, Anthony, Jamie, appreciate you being here, answering these questions. I know a lot of questions were coming in. If you guys need help once again or need to contact someone specific for some of the betas, please, you can just email me directly. You could also email sales if you want, but you can email webinars@wowza.com. And also, once again, thank you so much, Alex and Mac, for answering questions. I know there are a lot of questions coming in. You guys did a great job. Really appreciate it. I hope everyone has a great day and stay safe. All right. Take care.
Thank you. Goodbye, everybody.
Thank you.